The knock came sharp, desperate, almost swallowed by the howling snow outside. Jake Miller, 36, widowed single dad and part-time mechanic, opened the door expecting another neighbor stranded by the blizzard. But standing there was a woman wrapped in white frost, her hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes wild with cold and fear. "Please." "My car skidded off the road," she gasped, trembling. He didn't know it yet. But the woman he was pulling into his cabin wasn't just some lost traveler. She was the CEO who signed his pink slip 2 weeks ago. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Snow slammed against the windows, turning the world outside into a blur of white chaos. Jake kicked the door shut behind her, locking out the storm. The heat from the fireplace barely kept up, but he threw another log in anyway. "Sit, here, take this blanket," he said, handing her the old plaid one his late wife used to love. Her lips trembled. "Thank you. I didn't think anyone lived this far out." Jake half smiled, rubbing his frozen hands. "Most don't. Guess I'm stubborn." She nodded faintly, trying to stop her shivers. It took a second before recognition flickered in her eyes, hesitant, disbelieving. "Wait, Jake? You used to work at Crosswind Manufacturing, right?" His jaw tightened. "Yeah, until a budget cut laid me off." Her face drained. "Oh my God, you were in engineering, weren't you?" "Lead mechanic," he corrected quietly, turning away to pour her tea. "The one who warned the board the new design would fail. But I suppose the CEO thought I was exaggerating." The air thickened. She blinked, guilt flooding her expression. "That was me." Jake froze mid-pour. The storm roared outside, but inside, silence cut sharper than the wind. He placed the cup in front of her and forced a calm tone. "Then I guess fate has a sense of humor." She swallowed hard, wrapping her fingers around the mug. "I didn't know they'd fire you. I thought it was temporary. You had a kid?" "Still do," he interrupted. "She's asleep in the other room, 8 years old. Thinks I'm Superman." The woman's eyes softened. "You kept going for her." Jake met her gaze for the first time, steady, unflinching. "There's no other choice when someone small depends on you." She bit her lip, the shame visible now. "Jake, I'm sorry. I really am." He shrugged, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Save your apology. The storm's bad enough. Let's just make sure we both make it through the night." But as she watched him move, steady hands, quiet strength, the warmth he still offered her despite everything, something inside her shifted. For the first time in years, the powerful CEO felt small, human, and undeserving of his kindness. And yet, she couldn't look away. Morning came slow and heavy, like the storm itself didn't want to end. Snow draped the trees in silence, the kind that made every sound feel sacred. Jake stirred the coals in the fireplace, while the woman, Charlotte Evans, sat on the old couch, wrapped in his late wife's blanket, staring into the embers like they were the only thing keeping her grounded. He hadn't said much since sunrise. His daughter Lily had woken up squealing when she saw the stranger in the living room. "Daddy, who's that? Is she staying for breakfast?" Charlotte's tired face softened into something warmer. "Only if your dad doesn't mind." Jake muttered without looking up. "Guess one more plate won't hurt." The little girl ran to fetch the old ceramic dishes, her laughter echoing through the cabin like sunshine piercing frost. Charlotte smiled, but guilt tugged at her chest. She hadn't heard laughter like that in her house for years. Her penthouse was all glass and marble, beautiful but cold. "Your daughter's lovely," she said quietly. Jake finally turned to face her, his expression unreadable. She's all I've got. Charlotte hesitated. Does she know about her mom? He shook his head. Bits and pieces. I tell her mom loved the stars, so we look at them sometimes. She doesn't need to know how empty it's been. Charlotte looked down. You're a good father. Jake's lips tightened. Good fathers don't lose their jobs right before Christmas. The words hit her harder than he realized. She'd spent nights defending executive decisions, calling them strategic, never once considering the faces behind them. Jake, she said softly, I didn't know the layoff list had your name. If I had, you'd have done what? His tone was calm but sharp. Told the board to keep the guy who fixes engines instead of the one who sells them? You were protecting profits, not people. Don't act like it was anything else. Charlotte's shoulders sank. She didn't try to argue, because he was right. Outside, the storm had calmed, but the air inside grew heavier. Lily's giggles filled the silence again as she brought a stack of pancakes Jake had managed to make from old supplies. Daddy says if we share food, it means we're family for the morning. Jake gave a faint, reluctant smile. That's right, sweetheart. Guests eat first. Charlotte tried not to cry as Lily handed her a plate, syrup dripping everywhere. She took a bite and laughed. That's actually really good. Lily beamed. Daddy says pancakes fix sad people. Jake met Charlotte's gaze briefly, and for a second, they weren't CEO and employee. They were two lonely people holding their worlds together for someone else's sake. After breakfast, Jake grabbed his jacket. I'll check your car, see how bad it is. Charlotte followed him out. The storm had buried everything, up to the truck's doors, but Jake dug through it, his breath fogging in the cold. You're lucky, he said, peering under the hood. Couple hours, I can get it running. I can help, she offered, but he shook his head. You'll just freeze. Go inside. I'm not made of glass, you know, she said, picking up a wrench with a teasing smile. I wasn't always a CEO sitting behind a desk. My dad used to make me fix things with him. Jake paused, almost smiling. Guess I misjudged you. Guess I earned that, she said softly. They worked side by side, steam rising from their breaths, the sound of clanking metal filling the air. Snow sparkled around them like a quiet audience. She glanced at him, studying his focus, the way his jaw tightened, the steady rhythm of his hands, how he checked everything twice before declaring it done. You really loved your job, didn't you? She asked. Jake exhaled. It wasn't just a job. It was what kept me sane after my wife passed. Machines make sense. People don't. Charlotte's eyes softened. I know that feeling more than you think. When the engine finally coughed back to life, she laughed in relief. You did it. Jake wiped his hands on a rag. Told you I could? But before she could thank him, the sound of tires crunching against snow echoed down the hill. A black SUV rolled into view, sleek, tinted windows, too polished for the wilderness. Charlotte's smile vanished. Jake frowned. Friends of yours? She hesitated. More like assistants who'll panic if they don't find me soon. Two men in suits stepped out, one opening the back door. Ms. Evans, we've been looking everywhere. Are you all right? Jake turned to her, realization dawning. Evans. Charlotte Evans, as in Crosswind CEO Evans. She winced. I was going to tell you. The moment cracked like ice underfoot. He stepped back, his voice suddenly distant. So it's true. My boss just showed up on my doorstep in a blizzard. Charlotte stepped forward, desperate. Jake, please, don't make it sound like that. You saved my life. You and your daughter. You showed me more kindness in one night than anyone in my world has in years. He looked at her for a long moment, then forced a weary smile. Glad I could help, ma'am. Guess my little cabin's good for something after all. Her chest ached. Don't do that. Don't call me ma'am. Jake turned toward the house. Safe travels, Miss Evans. Charlotte stood in the snow, her throat tight. For the first time in years, she didn't know how to command a room. She only knew how to lose one. As she climbed into the SUV, Lily ran out barefoot, waving a little paper snowflake. For you. Daddy says every storm ends if you're kind enough to wait it out. Charlotte's lip trembled as she took it. Thank you, sweetheart. She looked past the girl at Jake, standing on the porch, arms crossed but eyes softer than his words. She didn't know what overcame her, but she said it anyway. Jake, I'll make this right. I promise. He said nothing. The SUV doors closed, and the car vanished into the white. That night, Jake tucked Lily in, his heart heavy with something he didn't want to name. Maybe it was regret. Maybe it was hope. He stared out the frosted window, muttering, people like her don't remember men like me. But he was wrong. Because 2 days later, when the roads cleared and he went to town to look for work, a notice pinned on the bulletin board made him freeze. Crosswind Manufacturing, urgent rehiring notice. Supervisor, Jake Miller, immediate start. He blinked. His name, his position, his old badge number. And at the bottom, a handwritten note in elegant ink. For every storm you've weathered, thank you for not closing your door. C.E. Jake stared at the paper, emotion catching in his throat. For the first time in a long time, he smiled. Really smiled. He didn't know what the future held, but somewhere between the snow and silence, two worlds had collided, and maybe, just maybe, healed something in both of them. 3 days later, Jake walked into Crosswind's glass headquarters for the first time since the layoff. The place smelled the same, fresh paint, espresso, and quiet tension. Only this time, something was different. People nodded respectfully as he passed. A receptionist nearly stood when she saw the name on his appointment slip. Mr. Miller, Ms. Evans is expecting you, she said softly, almost reverently. Jake still couldn't believe it. His old ID card had been reactivated. The company that had once pushed him out now called him back with a promotion and a salary he hadn't dared dream of. When the elevator doors opened, Charlotte Evans was waiting by the glass wall overlooking the city. She wasn't in her usual sharp, guarded posture. Her coat was off, her hair loose, and in her hands, she held the folded paper snowflake Lily had made. He hesitated. Didn't think you'd actually follow through? Her voice was steady, but warm. I keep my promises, Jake. You were right that night. I forgot what people look like beyond the numbers. I can't undo what happened, but I can make sure it never happens again. He crossed his arms. Why me? You've got a whole team of engineers. Because none of them opened a door in the middle of a blizzard, she said simply. None of them reminded me that kindness can build more than profit ever will. Jake let out a slow breath. For a long moment, they just stood there. The ex-employee who had nothing, and the CEO who had everything but peace. Then Charlotte straightened and motioned toward the conference room. There's one more thing. I called a board meeting. They're waiting for us. Jake frowned. Us? Yes, she said. You're about to explain to them why your old design, the one they ignored, was right all along. He blinked. You're serious? Dead serious. she said, her smile soft but determined. Let's show them what compassion and competence look like in the same room. The doors opened to a sea of suits and whispers. Jake walked in beside Charlotte, every step echoing. One board member muttered, "Is this the mechanic you mentioned?" Jake's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Charlotte raised a hand. "He's not a mechanic. He's our new lead innovator. And the man whose design we're reinstating after it nearly saved us millions." A ripple of murmurs. Jake took a slow breath, opened his folder, and began explaining. Calm, confident, unshaken. The same voice that once begged for a chance now commanded the room. Diagrams, projections, testing results, all laid out with precision. When he finished, silence. Then applause. Real, unforced applause. Charlotte looked proud, not as a CEO, but as someone who had finally remembered what leadership meant. She stood and said quietly to the board, "If you ever forget what humanity looks like, remember this man." Jake glanced at her, a flicker of disbelief and gratitude passing between them. Outside the room, as the meeting ended, Charlotte turned to him. "You've got your job back, and something else. You're helping redesign our humanitarian branch. I want Crosswind to build winter shelters using your modular heating system. You'll lead the project." He blinked, stunned. "You want me to build shelters? Why?" She smiled faintly. "Because someone once gave me shelter when I needed it most." Jake couldn't find words, so he just nodded. "Then let's make it count." Charlotte reached out her hand. He shook it firmly. No tension, no bitterness, just respect. As he left, she looked down at the little paper snowflake in her palm and whispered, "Every storm ends if you're kind enough to wait it out." And for both of them, it finally had.